प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं तं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तन्न विदुः सुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Gurubhyo Namaha. Now we begin with the chapter 4, Gnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, of renunciation, of action. This is the essence of Maharishi's translation and commentary, and we begin with the introduction and the vision of this chapter. Now let us look at the summary of what has transpired so far in the previous chapters. In the second chapter, Bhagavan brought out the understanding of the Samkhya Yoga. He brought the clarity about the perishable and the imperishable aspects of life, so that Arjuna could cast off his ignorance about the nature of life and its relationship with the field of action. Here, Bhagavan gave much inspiration to Arjuna's mind to realize his true divine nature in eternal freedom. In the third chapter, Bhagavan brought to light the practice of Karma Yoga, action in the state of union with the divine, or action in order to make this divine union permanent, thus raising the dignity of both the doer and the action. The seed thoughts of both these chapters. In the chapter 2, it is established in yoga, perform action, and in chapter 3, having abandoned attachment and having become balanced in success and failure. These two chapters together are therefore sufficient to bring enlightenment to a seeker. Further, the second chapter presented the doctrine of liberation. It analyzed life in its relative and absolute aspects and promised liberation through knowledge of these. Further, Bhagavan brought the knowledge in its entirety, which comprises both understanding and experience. And this understanding and experience is of the relative and the absolute, and it is irrespective of whether one's path is that of a householder or a recluse. So here there is the wisdom of Sankhya and the practice of yoga. The wisdom of Sankhya bringing the intellectual understanding of the relative and the absolute, and practice of yoga providing direct experience of these two spheres of existence. Further, in the third chapter, Bhagavan presented a doctrine of action designed to make permanent the experience of the absolute. And once the experience of the absolute has become permanent, then self-awareness is naturally maintained through all the waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states of consciousness. Here, one experiences oneself as separate from activity. When one becomes aware of this separateness from activity, then one lives this life of non-involvement, of natural non-attachment, and then one's intellect begins to inquire, is this the truth of life? Has this sense of separateness or non-attachment anything to do with real life, or is it an escape from life? Is the reality of life a duality, the duality of being and activity? Such doubts are removed by the knowledge given in the fourth chapter. Now this fourth chapter is dedicated to the knowledge of renunciation, analyzes the nature of action and the nature of the actor on both the individual and cosmic levels, on the level of man and on the level of God, and then proclaims the results of this systematic and rational analysis. Again, this knowledge of renunciation analyzes the nature of action and the nature of the actor on both individual and cosmic levels. And also it analyzes on the level of man and on the level of God, and then proclaims the results of this systematic and rational analysis. And what is this proclamation? The action and the actor are independent of one another. There exists a natural state of separation between them at every level. So this state of non-attachment or renunciation provides on the one hand a solid foundation of eternal freedom for the actor, and on the other the maximum possible success of action with most glorious fruits. It is this state of renunciation that provides the eternal background for the divine and for man. And this is the natural basis of life. Ignorance of this natural basis of life is the cause of bondage and all suffering. knowledge of this natural basis of life results in eternal freedom. And the whole purpose of the 4th chapter is to unfold this knowledge. Here, the most fascinating aspect is presented, which is bringing out knowledge of the renunciation of action. Again, it is the knowledge of the renunciation of action. It explains the whole field of action, showing how the stream of life advances towards the higher spheres of existence and towards the higher forces of nature until it merges with the ocean of eternal freedom in God consciousness. Bhagavan says that this chapter of knowledge is of the utmost importance to a seeker, for it explains the most valuable experience on the path of enlightenment. And what is this most valuable experience? It is the experience of the separateness of the self and activity. And as his practice advances, every seeker must necessarily reach this experience. And if he is to proceed smoothly on his path, unhindered by doubts, he must possess this knowledge. Further, in order to bring out the complete knowledge of the separation or the state of renunciation that exists between the self and activity, this chapter explains the two spheres of life, relative and absolute. And in so doing, it proclaims the philosophy of two fullnesses found in the Upanishads. This is full and that is full, Purnamada Purnamidam. That transcendental, unmanifested, absolute, eternal being is full, and this manifested, relative, ever-changing world of phenomenal existence is full. The absolute, which is eternal in its never-changing nature, is full, and the relative, which is also eternal in the ever-changing nature, is full. This living reality of two fullnesses in cosmic consciousness finds its consummation in the grand unity of God consciousness. So this chapter expounds this unified philosophy of the two fullnesses and thereby presents the core of the wisdom contained in the scripture of yoga. And so Bhagavan begins by introducing Arjuna to the account of the tradition of this yoga. Before we enter the chapter, here is the vision of this chapter. This path of action for gaining success in the world and freedom in divine consciousness has a long tradition. In its content, it is eternal. Even if in time its purity is lost and it is forgotten by man, each time it is restored in the world by a wave of revival that comes from God. This chapter brings the knowledge of the divine as separate from activity and the knowledge of Bhagavan's birth and action as divine. It raises man's consciousness to that purity which places him on the divine level. Here, the divine reaction to man depends upon man's action towards the divine. Further, knowing the divine as creator and yet as unattached to activity, the seekers of liberation will follow this example and engage in action. The course of action being unfathomable, performance of proper action is only possible with knowledge of the divine nature. And this knowledge is fully gained in divine consciousness or God consciousness, in which inner freedom and outer activity are simultaneously maintained. Here, gaining divine consciousness, man rises to oneness of life, and in this state, all activity is in the light of God. All actions culminate in the knowledge of God. For a seeker established in this knowledge, a man sees all beings in himself and finds himself in God. Again, established in this knowledge, a man sees all beings in himself and finds himself in God. This supreme state of purity in God consciousness puts an end to ignorance and all bondage of action. The light of this knowledge is kindled in one who is full of faith, intent of purpose, and has his senses subdued. It brings abiding peace without delay. One gains the state of non-attachment and freedom from doubts, and be established in the self, and action will not bind. We will start with the verse 1 tomorrow. So here I will end this Gnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, the yoga of knowledge of renunciation of action. This is the introduction, the translation and commentary by Maharshi Ji, and this is the essence. Jai Gurudev, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu.
अज्ञानातिमिरान्धस्य